I'll give you 30 seconds. Because everybody not going to do it. All right? We got 6,300 live viewers right now. So out of 6,300 people in class, I don't expect all of y'all to do it. But I know it's some of y'all that's actually going to do it. So I'm giving y'all a few seconds to do that. Marie, Marie, Laveau, Laveeau. Okay, so you should be there by now. Now, when you go to her profile, the first thing you're going to notice, fuck the story. She look white. It says the portrait is by Frank Schneider, based on a painting by George Catlin, and it's in the Louisiana State Museum. She has the head wrappers that we always wore, has to eat the wrapped up, and we came in a million different complexions. We always did, true enough. But she was not that light, and they made her skin very light purposely because she was so powerful and so strong. Remember, that the whole plan has been to kill the neuromelanin. So this is why anything dark was always considered bad, because it's about killing the image of neuromelanin and how powerful it is. Mrs. Laveau was a very, very dark-skinned goddess. All right, she had more neuromelanin than I have in myself right now. All right, as you all know, I'm not the darkest individual on the planet either. Right, it's individuals with way more neuromelanin than me. Right, because we have all these physical avatars have underwent some form of raping. All right, from when we've been born with these people. All right, how they was trying to crossbreed with us. Those of us that they would catch doing what they call slavery. Because like I told you, 90% of us was warring with them. Only a small percentage of our people was ever captured, and the ones that was captured was the ones who they forced to become slaves. But this is why the slaves were so quick to run away, because they knew all the places where we was at. All right? So they were more tempted to run away than if they came and conquered everything. Then why the fuck would the slaves be running away? They would run away nowhere, because the invaders are on all parts of the land. But slaves always was running away and stuff like that because we were getting captured. So you had majority of us that was still free and fighting while some was getting captured. And those that would get captured, some of them would stay on the plantations and help out of fear, you know what I'm saying? And some of us would say, fuck that. And niggas revolted and ran away and came back to the majority, where we were scattered out throughout the rest of the realm that they now call USA. But it says she was born September 10th, 1801. They said she transcended June 15th, 1881 at age 79. Lies, okay? And I'll tell you why in a minute. Let's read about her early life. It says, historical records state that Mrs. Laveau, Marie Laveau, was born a free woman of color in colonial New Orleans, which is today's French Quarters, in Louisiana, which was called New France at the time. All right. So, and they said this was a Thursday, September 10th, 1801. She was the biological daughter of Charles Laveau, and her mother was Margaretta Cantel. More lies, okay? Her dad's name was Charles Laveau. Her dad and her mom both were a part of what we like to call Egyptian culture. If you watch my lecture I just did on YouTube about Queen Khalifa, I spoke about how North America is really North Africa. And back in the 1800s, the 1700s, it was considered Egypt. So around the time that Mrs. Laveau was came onto the realm, you still had the time of what they like to call the Egyptians, because we were considered the Egyptians on this part of the planet, on this part of the realm that they consider present day North America. Okay, so Charles Laveau was considered a pharaoh amongst the Egyptians. So Marie Laveau dad was considered a pharaoh. Now, if you watch my lecture on YouTube, I expressed that pharaohs wasn't these individuals who had to be born. You know, your dad had to be a pharaoh. You had to be born in that family, right? That's how they teach you, right, about the history of a pharaoh. But I was teaching on YouTube that a pharaoh, you had goddesses that were pharaohs and gods, and a pharaoh was a level of spirituality that one had attained. So once you attain certain levels of mental alchemy, spiritual alchemy, master certain things within divination, and you master certain things in hoodoo and voodoo, and you master certain parts of spirituality, you unlock more chakras within yourself. You rose in frequency to the point where once that Kundalini energy reaches the top of the crown chakra, it sprouts out, and you advance to another level of self. So that's what the whole pharaoh helmet represented. Okay, so Mrs. Laveau grew up in that time, but remember, they got you thinking that the Egyptians was 150,000 years ago. But they wasn't. The Egyptians was a tribe. They was never a civilization, an ancient civilization. They tell you ancient to hide this from you and create this time lapse. Okay, to make everything seem so ancient and so far away and so scattered far apart. All this was happening at the same exact time. So Charles Laveau, because they say that her dad was a mayor in New Orleans. So they basically saying that Charles Laveau was very wealthy. He was a mayor in New Orleans, which is why Marie Laveau had so much credibility amongst the locals. This is what they tell you in her story. All right, to try to hide, because they couldn't hide the fact of who her father was, so they had to give a false backdrop. But her father being a pharaoh, all the pharaohs, you had to master being a shaman, divination work, hoodoo, voodoo, root work, conjuring. All right, different methods of meditation, yoga, different methods of self-discipline. That includes martial arts. You had to do all of that to even become a pharaoh. So her dad, Charles Laveau, having becoming a pharaoh in Egypt amongst the Egyptians, when she was born, she came into this realm because, she wasn't born. She landed here like we all do, right? There's no such thing as birth or death. We are multidimensional beings. So when she not transcended, I was going to say transcended, but when she landed on the realm, all right, she came into the realm at a time when the war was going on. Like the war's still going on now, but the time period was we were dropping in frequency from Egyptians to Mississippians. All right, because I got a lecture coming up on YouTube on the Mississippians. Go watch that lecture too when it come up. It's going to make everything make sense about Queen Khalifa as well as this lecture today. They all kind of go hand in hand. So we went from these Anunnaki gods, Lemurians, Atlanteans to Egyptians, to Mississippians, then Choctaw, Cherokee, all the tribes, then Black Indians, then Negroes and colored folks, then African Americans, right? Then we descended all the way down to niggas, thots, and bitches, right? And gangbangers, which is what they call us today. So she came in 1801. At that time, her mother has a name that cannot be pronounced because, remember, most of these words, our real names, we use vibration. We use all of the vibration in our esophagus. Remember, I taught you that the esophagus is an organ. All right, it's not a muscle; it's an organ. So we use all the different parts of our esophagus to form these clicks with our throat to make sounds to communicate. All right, these sounds contain more information in the sound than me sitting here giving a lecture for 3 hours straight. That's how advanced. That's how advanced we have always been, and we use ancient telepathy. All right. So her mother's name will be if we had to put a word for it today, high priest of high priestesses, right? Because her dad was a pharaoh, her mom was a very, very high priest, very, very powerful high priestess amongst the Egyptians. Okay, so when Marie Laveau comes into the realm, she is like, she getting showered with all the gems, all the jewels when it comes to being a practitioner of magic, of dark of using dark magic, which is infused with dark matter energy. She was well aware of this. Okay, so they hide all that and they skip around there. All they say is that she was born to a free woman of color, and that her dad, her biological dad, name was Charles, and he ended up being the mayor of New Orleans. Okay, then they jump to how she married, how they jumped through a whole childhood, just jumped to when she got married. All right, now the reason they jump past her childhood, they don't mention nothing about her childhood. They jump straight to her wedding. All right. Now let's talk about the wedding real quick. It say August 4th, 1819, she married Jacques Paris. All right. Also known as Jacques Santiago in Spanish records. A quadrant free man of color, so he was black, he was a god, all right, who had fled as a refugee from the Haitian Revolution in the former French colony Saint Domingue. Okay, now we get deeper. Okay, so her husband, all right, was one of the refugees that fought in the Haitian Revolution. Okay, now if you know anything about the Haitian Revolution, that's my past life. When I was signing over tour, and we used nothing but magic in Haitian. Now they call it Haitian hoodoo and Haitian voodoo, all right, to cut the word off from it. But we used that to defeat them. Now, why would they mention the Haitian Revolution? Because all this was going on at the same goddamn time. Okay? And the crazy thing about Marie Laveau, she was doing work over here in what they call North America, but she was also working in Jamaica. In Jamaica, because she knew how to transmute energy and she knew how to teleport. She was doing work in Jamaica. She was fighting in the war over here. She was fighting in the war in what's considered South America. All the places of the landmass she was going to, because she was one of the most powerful high priestesses of on the planet when she was incarnation here. Marie Laveau, and that's because she come from the roots of a dad that was a pharaoh. So that's one of the, a spiritual master. You have to be a master. One of the masters. You have to be a master of the arts, the esoteric arts, to even be deemed a pharaoh. And her mom was considered literally one of the high priest of high priestesses. So when you think of a high priestess or a high priest, these are like this who you go to, when people be in Ifa, right? They go to high priestess, right? They go to people who have a divine connection to the spiritual realm that other individuals do not have or cannot attain. Okay, so that's a high priestess. Now her mom was so high, her mom was such a powerful soul and spirit that she was ranked so high cosmically amongst cosmic royalty, astral royalty, that she was considered the high priestess of high priestess. Okay, so amongst all the high priestess, her mom was like the top high priestess. So she came up with both backdrops, so she got all the spiritual gems. She got so at a young age, she was aware of what was going on. She remembered who she was from jump. She knew her purpose right away and her role on the planet, which was to help in this war, to help close certain portals. All right. Now they don't mention none of that. They just jump all the way to her husband, and then they mention how their marriage certificate is preserved in the St. Louis Cathedral in New Orleans. The wedding mass was performed by Father Antonio de Sedella, and he was a priest known as Pierre Antoine. Jacques was part of a large white and Creole of color immigration of refugees to New Orleans in 1809. After the Haitian Revolution, which lasted from 1791 to 1804. Okay, so you got the Haitian Revolution going at the same time as you got these Seminole Wars going on over here. At the same time as you have us being looked at as the Egyptians. So Egyptian civilization is what you know it. All that was going on at the same time. But to divide us and hide history from us, they put this shit in different time stamps. So if you do go look into it, you still be completely confused about this big, gigantic war that took place. And you can see this the same war, just different names participating in the war. So that's very important because the Haitian Revolution was nothing but what Orisha energy was conjured up doing that. Oguns, right? Oguns. Stay with me. Okay. So Her dad was a pharaoh, her mom a high priest, and her husband, one of the main warriors, or refugees, if you want to call them that survived during the Haitian Revolution. So that lets you know who she was. She was surrounded by revolutionary energy, spiritual assassin. That's exactly what she was. That's exactly what she still is, Mrs. Laveau. Let's see what they say about her personal life. Shit, they jump right to the death of her husband, right? Following the death of her husband, she entered a domestic partnership with Christopher Dominic, a nobleman of French descent, with whom she lived until his death in 1855. Now, let's break down the story of this this domestic partnership she entered into with Christopher Dominic. Okay, Christopher Dominic, his family went on to start the chain line of the retail that we know today as Dominic's. Now, I don't know if they have them all over the USA, but in Chicago, we have a grocery store called Dominic's, all right? Well, that family line, they are all descendants of Christopher Dominic, okay? Christopher Dominic. Now, she went into a domestic partnership with him. So the partnership she went into with him was dealing with fruits and vegetables and food, all right? Because he already had the outlook for starting this Dominic's retail store. But when she was teaching him different ways to use the fruits and to gather the fruits, she was so in tune with divination that she was able to help him bring in a lot of fruit. Her role in the domestic partnership was because she was a master of divination. She could create the fruit out of thin air, basically. So this white man was using her to do that. Meanwhile, he was taking all the food and adding poisons to it because they still had enchantments and then trying to sell the poison to the people. So she ended up killing him in 1855. They just say that she stayed with him until his death. They don't tell you that she found out about what he was up to and she went to her crystal ball and put a curse on him and he threw up his entire lungs and his intestines and passed away right then and there. All right? Because she was trying to put a stop to them poisoning the food, right? Which they end up doing down the road anyway. But that was one of the first times they tried it, was with that Christopher Dominic. And that was the domestic partnership she entered into that they don't tell you about on Wikipedia. They kind of just jump around it. All right, but let's keep going. They were reported to have had 15 children. All right? They had 7 children to birth and baptismal records. But these are lies. All these names they list in these 15 children, you can't find them today. You can't find nobody related to the 15 children today. All right? Lies. They didn't have 15 children. All right? This is what they put out there because of they want to hide the true story of what was going on between her and this domestic partner, this Spanish conquistador, who she went into business with after her husband passed away. All right, so and the same person she went into business with is the same person that also was doing magic work against her husband. This is why her husband even passed away. So the white man killed her husband in order to reel her closer to him, to use her for her divination talents. And she didn't know that at first. So when she met him, she thought it was just pure natural fate. Not only was this white business partner using her, but he had killed her husband, which if he didn't remove her husband out the picture, she would have never went toward him anyway. So this is the true reason why she killed him in 1855 using different curses and hexes, where she literally made him throw up his entire intestines and his lungs and everything from the inside out. They had never seen nothing like it before. And they try to hide it, and of course they're going to hide it on Wikipedia. They're not going to tell you that. But when they mention her name, Marie Laveau, she's a very powerful name that's mentioned, and they fear the name to the point where they be like, hey, you can still feel her spirit wandering the streets of New Orleans and stuff like that. Why do they fear this goddess so much? Yet they don't tell you, they speak so little about what she did. All right? It's not too much about her. All right, they say in her career, she was a dedicated practitioner of voodoo, as well as a healer and herbalist. Laveau was said to have traveled the streets like she owned them. All right, said one New Orleans boy who attended an event at St. John's. Now, why would they say that? That's because she had the ability to split her etheric energy. All right, because she was in tune with the atom. She was in tune with every part of her down to the molecule, to the molecular level, down to the cell. She understood all of that. She understood that the cell is you have trillions of cells within you, and they are all electrically charged. She understood the connection to the sun, to the plants, everything. All right, so she knew how to split her etheric bodies. By splitting her aura fields up, she was able to project her aura fields to different locations. So this will make her appear to be at more than one place at the same time. All right, meaning you got somebody might say, hey, I seen Marie on the west side. Somebody else just said, I just seen her on the east side. Somebody will say, well, I saw her on the south side. Well, I just saw her on the west side. And they're like, hold on, how the fuck is she everywhere at once? And she really would be everywhere at once like that. All right, she really did take on an omnipresent state because she knew how to, split her etheric, her aura field up. Your aura is a big field of energy, and you can project it many different places. All right, just like you can mask it and hide it. So by her being a master of divination, she was in tune with all this stuff, and that's why she walked the streets like she owned them, because she had the community. Like if you didn't have carbon in your skin, like they feared her. Like the Spanish, the elites, they feared her not only because of what she did, but what her parents did. So they knew the gifts that she had. They had enchantments that they had passed down amongst them as Egyptians that they passed down to her. So she knew all this, and she was a practitioner of this, right? She basically mastered it. All right. Now say Marie Laveau took a short time to dominate voodoo culture and society in the New Orleans area. Then she became the queen of voodoo. All right. During her decades as queen, she had been asked questions about her family disputes, finances, and more. Now, when they say queen of voodoo, all right, that's just their way of saying that she did things that they had never seen done before. So it wasn't us, gods and goddesses, who named her queen of voodoo. It was those that feared her. These human beings. All right? They feared her. And I'm going to tell you why. We're going to talk a few more stories about it, but let's just skim through what they sent on Wikipedia. All right? All right, so they say they don't tell you too much more about her. They say she started a beauty parlor where she was a hairdresser for the wealthiest families of New Orleans. Of Laveau's magical career, there is little that can be substantiated, including whether her divinations were supported by a network of informants she developed while working as a hairdresser in prominent white households. All right. So let's break that down. So most of her magical career or stories cannot be substantiated. So what does that mean? It's just a fancy word for saying that it can't be proven, because we don't have no facts that we're gonna let y'all ass know to prove it. Even though they know it's true, they hit you with it can't be substantiated, so you don't believe it's true. You're like, okay, well, they don't really have no pictures or no video footage of her doing this, so it can't be substantiated. Nigga, air can't be substantiated. Air can. Let me rephrase that. Oxygen can't be substantiated. Again, you can't see oxygen. You can't even feel oxygen. You can feel air. You feel a breeze of air. Oxygen never gives you a breeze. That's air that does that. You can't see oxygen. You can't feel oxygen. But yet you believe you're breathing it, though. In and out. It can't be substantiated. Okay? There are a million different things around you that cannot be perceived with the eyes or the ears. Only the spirit and the soul. Right? That's the real realm. But they got to hit you with her magical abilities can't be substantiated to throw you off from what she did. Now, when they get to talking about her working as a hairdresser, that's a fact. She did work as a hairdresser, but that was only in order for her to work her magic even more. Because when she worked as a hairdresser, and that's pretty much, that's it. That's all they saying about it, y'all. They don't say nothing else. They talk about her legacy and people dedicate songs to her, and that's it. You feel me? That's it. You feel me? All right. But her working as a hairdresser, that's a true thing. She really did work as a hairdresser. But the reason she worked as a hairdresser is because if you know anything about voodoo or hoodoo, and you know how powerful ether is, you will understand why would a high priestess of voodoo want to work as a hairdresser. Not only was she able to get a lot of information from people working as a hairdresser, that's a fact. When they say she was able to get a lot of information from these wealthy people that came to her parlor, but she was still a nigga to them. Okay, so they still wasn't gonna tell her everything. The main thing she needed from them was their hair. By working with people by working as a hairdresser, by posing to work as a hairdresser, because her whole posing as a hairdresser was a part of her divination work. You see, that was a whole front, like a double O agent. Up, I'm gonna work as a hairdresser. So now I'm in everybody's head. I can get samples of everybody here, all these wealthy, rich, white people that's running the French quarters or running New Orleans. She had even put a spell in place to make them come to her shop. So this is why all the wealthy people start coming to her shop. They didn't even know it. They was under the spell the whole time. Then they would come sit in her chairs and she would do their hair and talk to them and get information about them that to do her work with. All right? And then we're going to talk about why that information was important. She get information about them as well as get their hair. All right? Whether you are a human or a god, your hair is an essential part of your being. It has all your DNA in it, or your DEA is in the strand of your hair. Right? Because it's for us, for the gods, it's full of DEA and static electricity. All right? A piece of all of you is in the follicles of your ether. Same thing with the human beings. Even though they have DNA, all their DNA is in their hair follicle. Right? This is why when you go get tests and stuff like that, sometimes they let you a drug test. They wouldn't just swab your mouth or just get your urine. Sometimes they say, what? Let's get a strand of hair. Because goddamn it, you could swab. You could have just smoked. If you brush your teeth, that shit won't be in your saliva no more after 48 hours. You could urine and it'll be going after 3 months if you ain't smoked. But your hair is so powerful that you have to go smoking at least 2-3 years for it not to show up in a strand of your hair or your ether, right? So the ether is a powerful thing. And she understood that, being a master of divination, having a father who was a pharaoh and a mom who was a high priest of high priestesses. She understood all the secrets. So she get out, get in their head, pluck a little strand. You know, they ain't gonna feel it. Dude, pluck a little strand, got you. Put their name in a little bag of got you. And then I'm talking about these were your mayors and your important townsmen, your counselors. Everybody that had powerful positions was in her parlor. And she worked a lot of magic against them. And at the same time she was doing this, imagine what war was going on. The Florida Seminole War. The first one and the second one she was a part of. When the first Seminole War was fought in 1816, because the Seminole Wars lasted 1816 to 1858. She was 15 years old. Even though time isn't real, she was 15. She played a major part in that war. All right? You got to understand, you had the Haitian Revolution still going on at the same time as the Seminole Wars, because we was at war with them. You got to see, we was together at war with them. And the stories of Queen Nanny, it get even deeper because Marie Laveau used to be in Jamaica. All right, so when you hearing stories of Queen Nanny, all right, Queen Nanny is Marie Laveau. These are the same powerful goddesses. All right, they're the same powerful goddesses. Or let me say this better, they were sisters, literally sisters. They both come from the same mom, same dad. All right. Using divination work, you had Queen Nanny working in Jamaica. You had Marie Laveau working over here in New Orleans, and then they would alter. Queen Nanny would come to New Orleans, Marie Laveau would go to Jamaica. Or sometimes they would be at the same place at the same time, altering. All right? You still had Queen Khalifa in California, and the Californians. You had all this fighting and all these wars taking place. And we was using magic, okay? So when you talk about Marie Laveau and the ability to shapeshift into her sister Queen Nanny, or Queen Nanny would shapeshift into her. All right. So you talking about, when you hear the story of Queen Nanny, they don't connect that to Marie Laveau. They don't tell you that they were sisters. They was around at the same time, and they was basically like the same individual because of their ability to split their etheric auras. All right, to even mask them together. This is a phase work. How you hear about something phasing together? They were phasing together to do shit. You feel me? This is where that whole idea of phasing comes from. This is how deep it runs. This is how powerful they were. They were casting storms, all that. They were making hurricanes come across the ocean, all right, and attack and hit these different islands. And this is before these human beings ever came up with harp. They was doing that first. Marie Laveau was doing that first. All right. It's even stories about how one time she was so good at being at divination work that you had aldermen and people coming to her like, hey, they talk about a story where it was a alderman or a human being that was in like a politician. He was very well respected, and his son had a court situation. All right, he had, like, I think it was a rape charge or a murder, but it don't matter the charge. What matters is what she did. They went to her. All right, being a white man, you know, he didn't want to let it be known, but he went to her, right, because he knew how her work was, and she helped his son beat that little court situation, because, you know, They still had court going on amongst themselves. They was just starting to start. They was just starting to start that for us, you know. But she helped his son clear himself of that situation, and she did it by putting these hot peppers under her tongue and going to the spiritual forces and asking for their help. And when they was asking her why would she use them hot peppers, because the guinea peppers were some of the hottest peppers and still is as you can find on the planet. And she put them under her tongue, and she did these rituals to the spirits, to the orishas and the different ancestral energies for 3 weeks straight. All right, and the reason she did it is because she understood that when one is in pain, it doesn't have to be physical pain, but in magic, right? When you connected with your ancestors, when you are on the spiritual realm and you want help, when you are in a physical pain or you are in emotional pain, they respond quicker. So like if you're going through a big heartbreak or your soul hurting inside or something hurting you physically, all right, they respond quicker to help us because we are one. So they respond more to that because when a person is in pain, they give off a certain type of energy. All right, so they come to our aid and rescue. And this was she understood. So this is why she put the peppers under her tongue. And then she took the peppers. So that was very painful to sit them under her tongue and go through 3 hour meditation rituals and do it for 3 weeks straight. You know, that had to be very, very painful for a physical pain. But a sacrifice to the spiritual realm is to go through a physical pain. So it was a self-torture ritual that she put herself through, which you could do. Some people do ones where they fall straight back. All right, to let the spirit world know that, hey, I'm one with y'all. I'm one with y'all. They do a drop, they do a fall. All right, to show that they give their full faith and trust to these spiritual higher forces to step in and help them. So this is what she was a part of. This is what she was into, and this is why she did that. And guess what? She took those peppers and she set them under the judge's seat in the courthouse. All right, and the judge ended up finding dropping the whole case basically. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people to take that from her, they try to say, well, she was cool with the judge. Yeah, she knew judges. She knew all those people because she had worked spell work on all of their ass. Yes, but her going to the spirits, going to the higher spirits, she actually did that. All right. Now, when they sit in here in her story and they say that she was a voodoo queen, let's lock in on voodoo. They are lying right there. Okay, because she wasn't really into voodoo. All right. She did practice forms of ancient voodoo. That's a fact. But when you look up voodoo, the first thing they're gonna tell you is that voodoo is a religion. Okay, it's a difference between voodoo and hoodoo. Voodoo is a religion. It's more organized, and now it has been like literally infiltrated to the point where they put a lot of saints in voodoo. So what they tell you about Marie Laveau is they make it seem like, hey, she was practicing voodoo and she would mix that in with the Catholic religion. Now we know that Catholicism is bullshit as well as Christianity, right? The Catholic Church is the ones that fucking killed Jesus. Even if he did exist, shit, they killed him. All right, so the Catholic Church that's what the Pope runs that, right? So of course the Pope and the Catholic Church were just the reptilians, right? That started all this religion bullshit. Of course they're going to take a powerful goddess like Marie Laveau and try to say that her magical abilities came from the fact that she incorporated ancient African voodoo with fucking Catholicism involving the saints. Fuck out of here. Fuck them white ass saints, nigga. She didn't use no saints. She tapped in with the ancestors. That's exactly what she did. She was tapping in with the orishas. Okay, that's exactly what she was doing. Because when you talking about hoodoo and voodoo, you bringing in the orishas. You bringing in archangels. You bringing in the fucking like the saints. The saints were made to try to be a watered down version of the fucking orishas. Okay, when they created the saints in the Catholic religion, they took them saints and modeled their stories after all the orishas. Understand that the Catholic religion they modeled them saints after the orishas. This is why every orisha story kind of coincides with a saint. Okay, so when you talk about voodoo, that's an ancient practice that was like a religion to us anciently, and then it was infiltrated by, of course, these these Spanish conquistadors. Okay, so then what happened was our voodoo became a lot more watered down because of that, and to branch away from that, we started focusing on our own forms of it because we were the creators of voodoo. And as we began to fall more in frequency, and they started to try to enslave us, right? We started to get more into a lighter form of voodoo, which we know today as hoodoo. Because in hoodoo, it deals with just channeling the ancestors and bringing in the old reaches, or you could channel into the God within you. You don't have to pray to nothing outside of yourself. You pray to you, and you can work with different deities, and you can work with different spiritual beings and archangels and old reaches and different forces. Yes, but you are a divine being as well. So you come to them with respect, but you ought to be respected as well. They go hand in hand. You are no less. You come from source. So Hoodoo kept that imagery, which how it used to be in Voodoo, until they infiltrated our shit. All right. So you got to understand that. That's why they want to say she was Voodoo Queen, and they don't have no problem saying that. And then you go look at the Voodoo, and they're going to say, well, Voodoo was a religion and incorporates the saints and this and that. And that's all bullshit. You feel me? Our essence is pure spirit and soul. We had nothing to do with these white people. We had no saints. We had nothing to do with religion, no organized religion, or none of that. Everything we did involved ourselves and everything around us. So that's why when they was into hoodoo, when she was a master of hoodoo and conjure work, or what they call root work. All right, it's root work because you're using different herbs and different roots, and you're using things like candles, and you're using elements, and you bringing in ancestors like the Orishas and supernatural forces like that, as well as you unlocking the genetics within you. You going deep into you to unlock that ability in you, being a divine being, being a non-ether being. All right, so that's the difference between hoodoo and voodoo. And Marie Laveau, as you notice, like on her death day, they saying her death date was June 15th, 1881, but that's a lie. She never died. And they don't want you to know that because she rose her vibration so high that she just left this vibration. She's not on this dimension anymore because she increased her vibration. So as you increase in vibration, it speeds up and it'll basically disappear to thin air on this dimension as you raise to higher dimension. So she rose herself to a higher dimension because in the war, she was 10 toes in the war. She was 10 toes in the war. She was participating in like I say, the Seminole War. She played a major role in that. She was one of the main master divinators. She was one of our most powerful high priestess doing spell work on our behalf during the Seminole Wars and the Gullah Wars. She participated in all of that. And she gave them hell. That's why we won the Gullah War. She was working spells. Then we had our other ancestors actually fighting. We had others doing lighter magic in different places, but she was one of the main ones casting some of the biggest rituals. All right, and they'll never let you know that, and then they want you to think she died, but then they give her a fake tone, they make her look white, say she was mixed. None of that took place, and she never died. Just like Timbuktu. Timbuktu is an ancient university that rose in frequency to a higher vibration. So you don't see it anymore in this dimension, but it still exists. All right. Same thing with ancient Kemet. A lot of our universities did that. Meanwhile, some of our universities, they were able to, because they was burning down our libraries and stealing our books and our information. So certain groups of us started to raise their universities to high vibrations so that these Spanish conquistadors wouldn't see it, so that they couldn't find it. Marie Laveau, when she's seeing the forces closing in on her as we continue through these wars, as you getting out of, because the Emancipation Proclamation got signed. And that was a whole curse that we agreed to, not even knowing, unbeknownst to us. So when she's saying the forces closing in on us and closing in on New Orleans, she increased her vibration. That's why so much mystery around her death. That's why they fear her to this day, because they like, man, they know she never died. They know that they came to get her and she increased her vibration and left the whole dimension on their ass. You feel me? Because they still had their hands on some of our magic as well. So they were able to be like, okay, she's using magic crystal ball. She's very powerful. She's using all type of elements. We need to get away to get at her. You get what I'm saying? So they was trying to use different magics to get at her, and they was closing in on certain groups of us, and those of us that they would catch, they would torture, and some of us would give away secrets and stuff like that. So they were starting to get closer and closer to reel in on who it was, like who was one of the main forces helping us, right? Because it was like an army. They had to pick us off and like, okay, well, who's in control of this? Who's in control of that? Who's in control of that? We were strategic. It was a deep war. We're still in that same war. So she's a very, very powerful goddess. Some of her spells that you still see talked about today is like her freezer spells or the honey jar spells you might hear people talk about. She had the honey jar spells that still float around today. All right. These is all forms of hoodoo, using basic things around you and using the elements and your intent to manifest these things. All right. And having an understanding of herbs and spices and different smells and oils and ointments and combining them together to create your desired result. So this is what she was a part of. Very, very powerful goddess, beautiful spirit, beautiful soul. And she was very charitable. She was into prosperity magic as well. So she had a lot of money. She had a lot. She was manifesting, all right? And what she would do with her charity, she would always give to the less fortunate. She would help all of her people. She would help the gods and goddesses, give back. She did all of that. And that's why New Orleans was going through dealing with so many hurricanes, because of the curse that she set over that landmass when they made her flee using banishment spells. So when she fled, she left a curse over New Orleans and the whole planet itself, but definitely New Orleans against these Spanish conquistadors, these conquerors. Very powerful goddess. So when you go look her up and you try to hear stories about her on YouTube and stuff like that, they don't tell the truth about her. They don't speak about how she set whole cities on fire with the snap of her fingers. They don't talk about how that whole river that's in New Orleans today, she created, the one where the bridge goes over it. That whole little bay, she created that. They don't talk about how she was using the animals against them. They don't talk about that. They just talk about the one little story where she helped one of their ass out with court. All the stuff she was doing, all the manifesting she was doing, all the creating she was doing. So that's why our goddesses, y'all got to get back to magic. Y'all are so powerful when y'all dive into it, because y'all were first. And the gods, we got to get back into it too. Dark matter energy. You feel me? We have to get back into practicing hoodoo. We have to get back into root work. And it's not hard to do. Just because you have the creativity in your soul. So all we got to do is start learning more about the different plants, different herbs and spices. They tell you about them. Now you put it together yourself and you use your intent to write things down. You know the colors. We know the colors. We know red is the lowest vibration. Violet is the highest. You feel me? So you could use your colors, use certain pens when you write your name through. So like all that's a real powerful thing. And then when you add ointments into it and you bring nature into it, you make it more powerful. And then if you turn it into a ritual where you make it last X amount of weeks or X amount of days, it's even more powerful. You get what I'm saying? So that's what you got to really understand. You know, you don't need the moon. I know a lot of people trying to use the moon. Well, do it on the new moon. Do it on the waxing moon. Do it on the full moon. Listen, if you're going to use the moon, you could probably use the full moon, because you got to remember, when the full moon is turned on, that's when they emitting the most what? AP, anti-photon energy. But we are divine beings, so we can transmute any energy. All the energy being pushed out from the full moon, we can transmute that energy. Because the sun is in us. So we still can use the energy and transmute it, but that's only for those who are advanced like that. If you're not advanced like that, you ain't gonna do nothing but donate your energy to their negative energy to help amplify their intent. So you want to do all your spells with under the sun. You feel me? If you don't have no sun, man, you can do it right in your crib. You are the sun, right? But if you are going to use a moon, I would say use the full moon. Reverse their energy, transmute the energy. That's what alchemy is, to transmute it. Somebody could say something negative, you could take that, transmute it, and turn it to something positive. Energy is energy. And when you get, the more advanced you get with dealing with energy, then you can transmute negative energy into positive energy. Once you realize that energy is just energy, you'll realize it don't matter if somebody say something good or bad. They gave you energy. So take that energy and transmute it and use it to amplify whatever else you want to do. That's mental alchemy. And she was a master of that as well. So I just want to touch on Marie Laveau and who she was, and really bring truth to light to the goddess. Happy transcendence to her. She still exists. Her spirit is still full throttle down here. This is why you can make offerings to her just like you can the Orishas. You can channel up anybody's spirit, even people that just was on this realm before, like basic relatives that left. You can put their picture on altars and conjure up their energy. That's when you realize that death isn't real, that everything is just energy. You know what I'm saying? And the more you realize that, the more you realize how powerful you are. And if we all get on that frequency, now we set in motion what we want. We do our work. It's called work. All right? In voodoo, they call it spells, and hoodoo is called work. You see what I'm saying? Same thing, though. So basically, hoodoo and voodoo is kind of like the same thing. It's just that our ancient voodoo has been so hidden from us because it's that powerful. So a lot of the voodoo that you see doing nowadays when they involve in the saints is watered down. So you start seeing a lot of our ancestors turn into hoodoo, which is our way of just getting more creative with our natural magic, our natural abilities. Remember, we have DEA, deoxyetheric acid, chromosomes, which is the chromosphere, many suns and universes all inside you, thalamus gland, pineal gland, spirit and soul, etheric bodies. You are everything. I am that I am. I am everything, and everything is me. No weapon formed against me shall ever prosper, and thus it shall be. Remind yourself that. I am everything and everything is me. Whatever I want, thus it shall be. Remind yourself that. I am everything and everything is me. I am forever prosperous and thus it shall be. Remind yourself that. I am everything and everything is me. I am forever healthy and thus it shall be. Remind yourself that. I am everything and everything is me. I am divinely protected. Creator of the cosmos. Here to help free the souls and the minds of the planet, and nothing will ever stop that. And thus it shall be. Remind yourself that.